and welcome back, viewers. Today we will be testing the Brownian motion band indicator. But before we do, if you have not watched the first video on the channel and all the videos after that, you need to go do that now. Here at the Academy of Forex, we are building the best trading system possible as a team. And as a team, we will all profit from it when we are done. You can find a link to the first video down below in the description, and you should also see it pop up in the top corner right now. There is also a link down below to sign up for TradingView. You can save a little bit of money if you use the link below to sign up for your account. You can also find a link below to join us on Discord. Discord is a free group communication platform where we are having great discussions about all things to do with trading. Lastly, I get people who ask me if I can send them a list of all the winning indicators that we have discovered. If you are interested in receiving a list of all the indicators that we have tested, including the ones that we have discovered, but you are not interested in going back and watching all the videos from the beginning and all the way through to date, then what you can do is you can sign up for our Patreon. If you sign up for the $9 a month Patreon, then I will send you a list of all the indicators that we have tested to date. I also send out a updated list every week of all the indicators that we have tested up to that point. And if you are just interested in supporting the channel, there is a lower tier Patreon at about $3 a month that you can sign up for as well. So look for the Patreon link down below in the description to sign up for either of those. Alright, as I said, today we will be testing the Brownian motion band indicator. But before we do, I wanted to put the indicator scoreboard up for everyone to see. So to date, we have tested 210 indicators, and out of those 210 indicators, 80 of them have been winners, which means that they have met or exceeded the 60% win-loss ratio threshold that we have set for them. The best ones so far were able to achieve a 100% win rate. Now you need to go back and watch those videos to understand the context of how they were able to achieve that. But as we are working on building the best trading system possible, you could take any one of those 80 indicators and get out there and start potentially profitably trading the markets with them now. So go back and watch those videos, make a list of those indicators, and get out there and see what you can do with them. But stick with us here as we work on maximizing your trading profits. Alright. As I said, the indicator today is the Brownian motion band indicator. And we did this one on the last video as well. And in that video, we tested the center line, which was then pointed out by one of the viewers that the center line is basically just a simple moving average. I thought it was a moving average, I just wasn't sure exactly which one it was. And so I thought maybe it had a slightly different calculation than most of the moving averages that we have tested. But no, it does appear as though it is a simple moving average there running down the middle. So thank you for the viewer that pointed that out. I definitely don't claim to be the smartest mathematical person in the world. I looked into this indicator obviously before testing it and did some research into it, and I didn't seem to find anything that suggested what the center line was based off of. And so sometimes the smarter minds prevail when it comes to decoding things and understanding the functionality behind how they work. So again, thank you for the viewer who pointed that out. And then there was another viewer who said that I should have tested it with the bands and not with just the center line. And so the reason why I hadn't tested it with the bands was because we try our best to test each indicator on the default settings without having to go in and make modifications. There is definitely a thin line between tweaking modifications ever so slightly and working our way down the rabbit hole of, try it this way and try it that way and tweak this and try that setting and, do this and do that. And, before we know it, we have, one indicator that we have spent a month tweaking and playing with. And so that's why I throw the indicator up there initially to start with. And then I hope that those of you out there who are regular viewers to the channel will take that indicator and will tweak it and play with it and change the settings and see what else you can get out of it. I mean, I explained that at the beginning of every video, is that you should take those indicators that I am doing videos on and play with them and tweak them and see what you can achieve. And so I don't mind, going in and doing it, but I'm only one person and I only have so much time. I definitely can't take each indicator that we're testing each day and spend hours and hours and hours tweaking it in different ways and testing it. And so, yes, there will be times when, people say, hey, try it this way. And, that's a valid argument in this particular case. Again, the reason why I didn't test it with the bands was because if I scroll back here on the default settings, you see that out of, let's see, 2000 and let's say, let's go back here, 2014 all the way up to 2018, that is 4 years of time. You can see that there are only 3 moments where the price action, I guess we could say this one right here as well. There are only 4 moments where price action moves enough to interact with the bands. Obviously, in 4 years, 4 signals, that's not a very logical way to test an indicator. And so on its default settings, it's pretty much useless using the bands. If we were to break it down into a lower time frame, maybe then it would be useful to incorporate the bands into how the indicator is used. But again, using it on a daily time frame on the default settings, this is what we would have gotten. We would have went an entire year and not gotten a single signal. We could have went, in this particular case, from January of 2016, pretty much the beginning of 2016, all the way up into January of 2018, there was not a single touch of the bands by price action. And so for 2 years, we didn't get a single signal. So you see why it wasn't a very logical way of testing the indicator. What I wanted to do was test it on its default settings, and that's what I did. So now let's talk about how we can test it with using the bands. Well, obviously we are not going to be able to leave it on its default settings. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go in, and I've already turned on the bands. It's funny because the viewer who also recommended that we trade it with the bands said that the default settings are with the bands. That's the comment that they left just recently. And again, I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm not trying to argue with the viewers on the channel. Definitely, we are all trying to work on the same team here. But the funny part is the default settings of the indicator is not what the bands turned on. So if I reset the default, this is what the indicator looks like. And so I have to actually go in and physically turn on the bands. And then at this point, because most people are used to using a dark background of some sort on their charting, it is actually set that the, well, I take that back to go down the rabbit hole a little bit further on the default settings. If you actually click on it, the opacity of the bands are turned completely down. And so you can see that obviously the default settings of the indicator was not using the bands. Now, obviously, again, the creator intended the bands to be used in some way. I can't imagine that they created the indicator with bands and did not expect them to be used. But clearly, the bands were not part of the default setting of this indicator. Once again, that is the reason why I thought it best to not test the bands, but to test the center line. And then again, once again, before I knew exactly what the center line was. Had I known that the center line was a simple moving average, I may not even have tested it at all. But hey, that's where we start to think outside the box. And, we look at people's opinion and look at people's idea, and then we take that information and we start digging down a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And so here we are. We will need to go in and we will need to change the input of the volatility multiple to 1 to narrow in the bands. Now, of course, again, you can change it to whatever you want. I think obviously 0 makes it all just one line, and so that doesn't make much sense. And so you would have to have it in a positive number. And so here is where it gets subjective. Do we do 0.5? Do we do 1? Do we do 1.5? I mean, it kind of becomes one of those instances where we are using people's kind of opinion on what should what multiplier is best to be used. And then so we work our way down that rabbit hole where we end up okay, well, one person says test it with the bands. Okay, I test it with the bands, and then the next person comes along and says, well, you shouldn't have done it on the multiple of 1, you should have done it on the multiple of 1.25, or however you want to put it. And so that is assuming that you can do, pretty sure you can. Yeah. So you can go in and you can actually, break it down. It doesn't have to be 1. It could be 1 point, whatever. And so that's where we kind of run into that rabbit hole of where does it end? Where do we stop testing it by people's opinion? But it is a valid argument to say, hey, you should test it with the bands. Now, the creator of the indicator said that this could be used as traded as or signals as Bollinger Bands. And so but the general purpose of this indicator was to be used in calculating specific option strategy like the iron condor. And so that is the reason why it was set on the default settings that it was, and that is why it wasn't really intended to be used in the way that we're using it now, as far as trading the bands as price action interacts with it at certain points. The bands were meant to be out in areas so that way you could then calculate how you set up your option strategy using the center line and using the upper and lower bands for specific calculations. Again, another reason why I didn't feel like testing the bands was an accurate way of trying to trade the default settings of this indicator. All right, now that I have said all that, let's discuss how we will trade this with the bands. Again, we'd had to change the multiple to 1 to hug in the bands and get them to interact with the price action. At that point, we are going to trade it very similar to how we traded Bollinger Bands. Now, to add even another layer of, another layer of opinion to what we're doing here, there is more than one way to trade Bollinger Bands. And it's funny because they are almost the exact opposite. If you look up how to trade Bollinger Bands, some people will say, well, when the price action gets to the lower or the upper band, that is a sign that it is kind of in an overextended area, and you should look for price action to return to the center. So basically a reversal. And then some people say, well, no, the Bollinger Band, upper and lower band, is a sign of momentum. And so when price action gets to the upper or lower band, that is a sign that there is a lot of momentum in that move. And so if it hits the upper band, there's momentum to the upside and you should be going long. And if it hits the lower band, there's momentum to the downside and you should be going short. And so now we have two completely contradicting point of views of how Bollinger Band should be traded. And if we were trading this just like the Bollinger Band, then we have two polar opposites of how we should be trading this. That gets to be very problematic because obviously, they just, again, they're just completely opposite of each other. I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way than that. There are some indicators that can be traded in different ways, but generally not in the complete opposite way. Generally, it's, well, you enter in a little bit later going, in the same direction, or you enter in a little bit earlier going in the same direction, not traded in complete opposite fashions. And so when we traded or tested the Bollinger Band indicator, what we did was we used the reversal strategy of the Bollinger Band. And so we basically looked for price action to come down and touch the lower band or come up and touch the upper band, and then at that point we took that as an overextension of price action and we looked for it to return back to center. And that's how we're going to test this one. Now, another layer of problem with testing in this way, and this is what we ran into when we were testing the Bollinger Bands themselves, was that there are moments where price action comes down and touches the Bollinger Band, like right here, where it then in the next candle is also touching the lower, and the next candle it touches the lower, and the next candle, well, I guess not, I guess that green candle could be, but the not the next, but the next one after that is touching the lower band. And so we run into a scenario to where it gets difficult when trading it in this way to know where we should be entering. I mean, do we enter right on this candle, wait for it to get stopped out, then enter on the next one, and so on and so on? So what I'm going to propose is this. When we get a touch of either the upper or lower band, we look for the next candle to break either up above the previous candle or break down below the previous candle. So that might be a little bit difficult to understand. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example real fast, and then I'll stop blathering on about things and we'll get into testing the indicator. So we see here, let's look at this area right here on screen. We see these two big red candles. They come down. The wick touches and goes through the band here, and the corner of this big red candle is touching the lower band. And we see here this green candle is also spiking down below with its wick to the downside through the band. And then on this green candle right here, we see that it actually, does it close? Yeah, I mean, so we're looking at the body technically and not the wicks, but what we're looking for is the close of this body to be higher than the close of this body, which would give us a signal to go long. We would then go long right here, and then we would see what happens. So down here to the downside, we hit 80 pips to the low side, and we hit 80 pips to the upside. What is our 80 pips? We would have gotten a first take profit out of this trade. And then on the reverse side, it's just the opposite. And so let's say, let's look at this area right here. Price action comes up, it touches the upper band. We see that it gives us this red candle right here, gives us this green candle right here, which is not lower than the next one. So we're looking for a candle to close lower. So this red candle is not lower than this green candle. This green candle is not lower than this red candle. This red candle is lower than this green candle. And so this would be our entry right here. And then we would again ride it out like normal. Let's see, we get 80 pips to the downside, just barely, and we get almost no movement up towards our stop. Actually, yes, this would be a short. And so when it touches the upper, we're looking for shorts. When it touches the lower, we're looking for longs. And so in this case, we would have gotten to first take profit again. All right, now we have again talked, and we have not started testing. So now we're riding the lower band. Let's go ahead and get into testing of this. We're riding the lower band, then we get a close above, let's see, right here, not a close above, not looking for a close above the band, we're looking for a close of a candle above the most recent candles there. So we get that right there. We get 118 pips out of it, and so we get our first winning trade. Let's go ahead and keep playing it out. We are looking for two things. We are looking for a touch, like for the body to close on the line, either upper or lower, and we are also looking for wicks to spike through the lower or upper band. Either one of those would be a valid kind of signal to watch for, again, the next candle. So we pick up this one right here. This one unfortunately would have been a losing trade. And keep on moving on. Get close, but it doesn't quite touch there. Looking, it's up on the upside. All right, so right here we have officially spiked a wick through the upper band. We're now waiting for the first candle to close below, and it would have been this big red candle. It closes slightly below this big green candle right here. So that would have been our entry into the trade, looking for a reversal to the downside. 120 pips up here, we would have gotten stopped out. So unfortunately that would not have worked out for us. It did make a slight pullback to the downside here. I don't know, before it then took back off up. That would not have gotten us to 80 pips either. So let's keep playing it out. Let's see, it looks like right here we have the corner of this candle is touching the upper band, and so the next candle to close below would be this one right here, and we get to take profit rather quickly. Let's go ahead and keep playing this out. We are on the lower side now. It's touching the lower band, so we're looking for the next green candle to close up above. Let's see here, and it happens right there. Let's play this out a little bit more and see what it does. And it gets us to take profit again rather quickly. Little bit of challenge to our stop, but not a whole lot. Alright, so we were upside here. This one right here would have been our entry. And definitely looks like, yep, 80 pips there. Another winning trade. And interesting enough, if you overlap Bollinger Band on top of this indicator, they line up very, very closely. And so we are basically at this point kind of retesting Bollinger Bands with this indicator. But again, it's worth it to see if maybe slight changes make a difference. I mean, if you remember, the Bollinger Band actually was one of the winning indicators. And so, you know, it already did a pretty good job. How far did that travel? That one got us stopped out, unfortunately. So I guess we should be mindful here, because we would have gotten stopped out on this candle here, and then that would have also been a valid entry. We would have entered on this candle here. And this is where the small nuances of forward testing tend to reveal some of the oddball things that you don't think about in the back testing process. And so just going back here and just kind of looking at these losing trades to make sure that we didn't have the same issue. So here we would enter short on this candle here, this green candle. We would have, and it's funny, I'm really putting our video audio sync to the test in this one, pointing out these very individual candles. So on this green candle right here, so hopefully video and audio is still doing well in their sync. This one right here would have closed out our trade for a stop, but it was touching the upper band, and so technically speaking, we would have entered again here on this one. And unfortunately, that one would have added another stop, another losing trade. Go ahead and keep playing this forward, trying to make this video as quick as possible. It's getting really long because I rambled on forever at the beginning of the video. Moving along here, we get quite a long period of time with not a lot of movement. I mean, there's definitely trades to be had in there, but just our bands are not getting close enough. So this kind of reinforces the original problem that I was having with this indicator, in that sometimes these bands and price action just never, I mean, it goes months and months and months without ever touching. But there are definitely opportunities for trades to be had in here with something that reacts a little bit quicker. Alright, here we are over here. We're going to jump on this one right here for a long trade, play it out, and looks like we get to take profit, so nicely done. We are into November. We're up on the top band now, up on this upper band, so we're looking for something to break below, and it does there. Looks like we get ourselves to Well, would have been this one here. So that one, unfortunately, would have stopped us out. We don't get a touch of the upper band. This backside here, we're now in December, playing it out. We're on the upper band now. Let's go ahead and look for a close right there. This one. And we definitely get stopped out on that one. And that would have put us at the end of the year right there. All right, so there we have it for the motion band, actually using the bands themselves. Let's add these up and see what we get out of it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we get 12 trades altogether, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 winning trades. And so unfortunately, that is not going to meet the 60% criteria either. It actually did worse than what the Bollinger Band did, testing it almost in the same exact way. So yeah, there we have it. I mean, it was a good call. Not arguing with the fact that we should have tested it another way. I definitely thought about that when I was determining how to trade it in the first place. And so yeah, I like being challenged. I like having people throw other ideas out there. If it's realistic, we can try it. And so we did, but unfortunately it still didn't quite work out the way we wanted it to. So it's going to go on the no list again, and we'll move on to the next indicator from here.